So, for the past few months, YouTube has been flooded with videos about the Warner Bros. Discovery merger and the culling of animation in general. It definitely has taken an emotional toll on me, as I imagine it has for many others. I've seen countless people pour out their hearts because so many shows and their creative teams are basically getting screwed out of their passion. And for what? I always hear how Discovery is so caught up with reducing their debt that this culling is just a way to save a few bucks. They're doing it for the tax write-off and to not have to pay residuals or insurance, and yeah, that's kind of the whole reasoning behind this. However, I haven't really heard anyone talk about the social implications of this cataclysm. How will the future of animation shape our society? In my experience as an animation junkie, I've come to realize that animated shows have a way to connect with you in a way that's almost childlike, and not just because they're kids shows. Shows like Harley Quinn and Futurama, even cartoons like Berserk and Cowboy Bebop, and yes, those are cartoons, anime is a lie and a mistake, tap into your imagination and allow for suspension of disbelief that would cost a fortune to pull off in live action. Just look at this and tell me I'm wrong. Or maybe this. Or this. I mean, anything would be better than Cats, right? This isn't just happening with HBO and Cartoon Network. Shows like Owl House on Disney are getting cancelled with little to no warning to the people working on them. The way I see it, the greed of corporations will lead us to repeat history, specifically how Ronald Reagan allowed companies to legally target ads towards children via cartoons like Transformers and He-Man. Except this time, they're selling us more than just toys. It hurts me to admit that the people making these decisions care more about profits than the integrity that these amazing stories represent. This is because corporations have a fiduciary obligation to shareholders at the expense of the people who truly care about these properties. I've noticed a peculiar pattern in which shows are being cancelled or pulled, and which shows get to stay. To explore the dark implications of this, I'd like to present and examine two of my favorite shows, Final Space and Ballmasters 9009. Now this is a show that knows how to send you on a good trip. Created by Christy Krackus of Super Jail fame, Ballmasters is a love letter to anime. It has some amazing fluid animation, and as far as story goes,
Hurry up and kill your parents. Kill your parents.
Son.
Look, this show found me, that's all I'm gonna say. The Leptons are an underdog team that has to learn to work together to win at life. More or less. It's a fun show that ultimately ends on a pretty liberal and kind of fashy note. Pretty much, the game, or life, is a competition against the odds to bring out one's potential. Just gotta climb the ladder of success. Final Space kinda has a different tone though. Created by Olin Rogers of Balloon Shop fame, it's about a crew that's just trying to survive. It asks the question, can you be a good pro tag in Warhammer? Spoiler alert, no. By the way, I've never delved into Warhammer or anything like that, so if I'm completely wrong, just yell at me in the comments. It definitely helped my analytics. Both of these shows are pretty much the same. They both teach the power of friendship and never giving up while fighting against immeasurable odds to achieve your goal. It's the basic formula of a lot of cartoons, but these shows teach this in their own, very distinct way.
I'm so wasted.
In Ballmasters, Quasar says,
I created the game to save humanity from itself, by inspiring people to rise to their full potential.
and
The game is not just a means to achieve peace on Earth. The game disciplined the unwitting future heroes of this conflict to meet our uninvited guests head-on. You, Ballmaster, will be Earth's champion, together with the Leptons. The greatest teams of the game become my elite army, the newly minted Terra Defense Force.
No, calm down.
No.
in this show, Quasar is essentially God, the idol that everyone aspires to be. So, following this logic, we can assume that this idea is coded as a good thing. Right? Except, I feel like I've heard something very similar to that line in Final Space. It may not be a one-to-one analogy, but Lord Commander tells Avocado,
I'm going to turn you from the butcher you are into a master by giving you a cause.
and
I've heard the cries of this galaxy. They yearn for a savior. And with you as my number 2, I will finally reveal myself to them. There will be those that resist, which is why I need you.
I'm not sure if you can tell, but he's the baddie. I find it interesting that both shows bring up a similar theme, but presented in different ways, one good and one bad. In fact, while Ballmasters glorifies this cause that brings out your potential, Final Space seems to convey the idea that the cause should come from within, not some holier-than-thou savior.
After the Rad Wars, the Great One united us and made us all pros.
These shows differ in another way. Can you guess which one is still on HBO and which one got ejected into Final Space? Crap, I just gave it away. So, why pull one show from the catalog and not the other? Wouldn't they both be tax write-offs? How do these tax write-offs even work? Well, I'll tell you. According to a Hollywood Reporter article, there are 2 types of write-offs at play here: impairment and development. Impairment is when there is
a permanent reduction in the value of a company asset. Impairment can occur as the result of an unusual or one-time event, such as change in legal or economic conditions, a change in consumer demand, or damage that impacts an asset.
I couldn't find a source on the definition of development write-offs because I'm lazy, but according to the same Hollywood Reporter article, development write-offs were for content that was still in production.
Content impairments and development write-offs resulted from a global strategic view of content following the merger.
Pretty much, they looked at what was performing well versus cost, measured once, and cut twice. They actually wrote off more completed shows than shows in development. So I find it odd that shows with such a big following, like Final Space, get pulled, but lesser known shows like Ballmasters get to stay. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm even bringing up Final Space. After all, it was cancelled long before Discovery Plus came into the picture. While that may be true, it's also true that Final Space was cancelled after the AT&T and Warner Brothers mergers for what we now know are the same reasons according to Star Cadet, which is Olin's production company. This next part is going to be mostly speculation, so feel free to call me out in the comments. It sure seems like a lot of shows that are being pulled or straight up cancelled lean more on the progressive side. It was shows like Infinity Train and Harley Quinn that helped me find the strength to cut out toxic people in my life and really grow as a person, to strive to become my best self, to question and fight against the status quo, to fight for a better tomorrow, not for myself, but for everyone. Not to say that Ballmasters wasn't a good influence on me, but after looking into the show with a clear mind, it's not as progressive in its ideals as the other shows I've mentioned so far. For example, I feel like Quasar is reminiscent of Emperor Bellos of Owl House, just another king in yellow. Like, literally, he's the king and he's painted yellow. It's kind of obvious. I like to say that queer culture is the drill that will pierce through the heavens. Inclusive values are how we fight against the anti-spirals. For any Gurren Lagann fans out there, do y'all still exist? Nowadays, it seems that any show that dares push this idea too strongly and doesn't have a big studio to protect it are getting the axe. And that's ultimately what all this comes down to. One more quote from that Hollywood Reporter article.
WBD has said that it is seeking some $3 billion in cost savings in the next few years tied to the merger. Those savings will come in the form of merging technology systems and offices, as well as layoffs. Though, rethinking how and where it spends money on content is clearly also part of the plan.
These cancellations from corporations like Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery are painting a clear picture of how they want to reallocate their resources. It seems pretty clear to me how these companies ultimately choose what cartoons get made. They want to keep the status quo, the dog-eat-dog world with an F you got mine mentality. I mean, it's just weird that a lot of shows getting purged have more inclusive elements in them. After all, shows like Harley Quinn and Owl House have big followings. So how would any review process indicate that these shows aren't performing well enough for continued production? While it's true that this Purge is Warner Brothers Discovery claiming tax write-offs, my fried brain can't help but overthink about how this attack on animation is more calculated than just a money move. It seems more like an attack on inclusivity as a whole. It's reminiscent of the mindset that asks, why help marginalized people when they could end up being a liability to achieving your own goals? A very pick-me attitude in my opinion. Truth be told, I definitely used to have that pick-me attitude, where I calculated whether it was worth being a decent human being in any given situation. I was a bad person, and I only found the courage to strive to better myself because of shows like Infinity Train and Owl House. If shows like these become a rarity, I fear that less and less people will find the courage to be their best selves as well, to encourage us to fight for a better world, even with all the odds stacked against us, as opposed to giving in to the status quo. I honestly don't know how to fight back against this Purge. These companies are so powerful, and I'm just some girl that barely knows how to survive, let alone thrive. I'm so wrecked with anxiety and self-doubt, while these decision-making CEOs are so ruthless. But that's why shows like these are so important. They give me hope that a better world is possible. One not driven by greed, but by compassion. They give me the conviction to fight for that world. They help me identify and break out of the toxic cycles I've trapped myself in so that I can actually respect myself. Without them, I'd probably have ended up being another Blair White clone. Being a penguin is way better. Okay, bye. Ooh.